Yeah, my name's Joel. I'm Environment and Sustainability Officer, working at CANEGROWERS Cairns region. So basically work from sort of around that Babinda up to north of Cairns with cane growers within that area. Sort of come to be in this role, I was working other jobs around the area with land management and that type of thing, and always sort of wanted to be within the sugar industry. And there was a few projects going, so managed to get on board with some of those short-term projects, which then ended up rolling over into this position, which I'm currently in now. I did a Bachelor of Environmental Science through CQU Uni, but I did that part-time whilst also working, because working full-time on ground, sort of doing contract jobs for NRM groups and national parks, sort of weed control and re-veg work and that type of thing. So the idea was that whilst getting the tertiary qualifications, also getting that on-ground experience while you're going. I think that made a big difference to getting jobs once I'd sort of gotten that qualification and sort of progressing through my career. Yeah. Well, growing up sort of around this wet tropics area and far north Queensland in general, sugarcane is pretty predominant within the area. So growing up, spent a lot of time around farms, friends and that sort of thing. And always enjoyed being on farms and being around growers and that. So it was a pretty good sort of idea to get involved in the industry and work in it. It's a combination of sort of being out on farm as well as being in office. So not every day is the same. There's always something different going on, which is great. And also I think I wanted to get involved also to try and showcase to the wider community a lot of the good things growers are doing in sort of sustainable land management and also innovation and technology adoption as well. Because I think when people think of farmers, they think of someone just sitting on a tractor. They don't really think of all the other technology stuff that goes with it. So sort of in my role, key part of that's BMP facilitator as well. So working through best management practice accreditation with growers. I think gaining that independent accreditation also shows the wider community what the industry is doing, to showcase that as well. But basically, for a grower to get BMP accreditation, there's 3 core modules. So the soil health and nutrient management, irrigation and drainage, and then weed, pest and disease. So they're the 3 core modules that growers need to work through. So the sort of minimum standards within those modules as well, which a grower needs to meet in the way of the practices they use on farm. And record keeping obviously is a fairly important part as well, so they can sort of prove that this is what they're doing. So I work with the grower, look at what they're doing and practices they've got. Depending where they're at, we'll come up with a plan to get to BMP standards. Depending on the grower, that can be pretty straightforward, or it can take a bit of time, depending where we're starting from, the size of the operation and all that. There's a fair few variables there. But basically, we work till we reach that BMP standard, and once we're there, there's a independent auditor. Does an audit with the grower, and then once we pass that, or the grower passes that, they have BMP accreditation for a 5-year period. So that's why I think it's important that growers do that, and for the industry too, because having that sort of third-party independent audit really does go a long way to showing the wider community what growers are doing and the sustainable land management practices they're using. Probably, I think flexibility is probably the really major one, working with growers and also farming in general, because farming pretty well is dictated to by the weather. So finding those opportunities, maybe when the weather's not so optimal for people to be out and about doing stuff on farm. When it's a bit too wet, you probably have more of an opportunity to go and engage with growers, and they'll actually have the time available to spend with you. So it's being flexible and sort of probably working around those sort of things is pretty important. Time management is probably another major one because of that sort of flexibility and changing sort of priorities, and also changing priorities throughout the year, like whether, there's certain times of the year growers will be planting, and then when they're harvesting, they're all pretty flat out, so they got their priorities then. And then there's other times of the year where they've got a little bit more time. So it's trying to work out your workload and work plan to fit in around the season and the grower schedule as well to maximize, benefit you can add to the growers, and probably also being able to work well with others and collaborate with others, because within the sugar industry, there's a lot of different organisations, sort of like cane growers being your representative bodies, and then other organisations like SRA, Sugar Research Australia, the research organisation, and then the millers as well. So it's working in with all those organisations to try and get the best benefit for the industry and the individual growers, so that if you're talking to a grower and you know that other people are probably the appropriate person to help them with whatever, so working with everyone around you to try and maximise the benefit for the growers. Growers have always sort of been pretty big adopters of technology or innovative ideas that'll sort of help them with farming efficiencies and things like that. GPS these days is probably a pretty common thing within the industry, and people using that for record keeping and variable rate applications and other sort of operations on farm. I think probably the sort of emerging one, or one that people are giving a lot of interest to at the moment, is drone technology within the industries. Drones for mapping paddocks and looking at yield monitoring, biomass, and that sort of thing. And then now with the bigger drones, which are coming out and getting more economically viable for growers to buy, looking at spray drones and things like that. So being able to minimise the amount of trafficking up and down the farm and diesel and all that sort of thing, and time a grower has to use for being able to map and then go and spot spray certain areas on a farm, especially in wet areas where sometimes it's not that easy to get across the land when you sort of need to. So I think that drones is a really big thing, which is sort of coming into play now and will probably be a major part of farming systems in the not too distant future. Probably the biggest challenge when I first sort of started working in the industry was, even though I did grow up around, cane farms and that, like I said, I wasn't personally, didn't grow up on a cane farm. So probably some of the more technical aspects about sugarcane growing and cane farming in particular, even though I'd gone to uni and grew up around the area and done a lot of other work around weeds and things like that, specific to sugarcane, there was probably a lot to learn still in some aspects. So I just took any opportunity I got from growers who were willing to show me or spend time with me, spend time with them out on farm, learning what they do, the sort of processes that they implement and products they use and that type of thing. And then same with as well with other stakeholders from SRA around that are willing to sort of offer any time, just spend as much time as you can with people who have the experience that you're looking for to get that sort of hands-on learning. Yeah. Probably traveling around Australia, like living and working in different areas, made a big difference to just getting experience and ideas of what you do want to do. It's probably doing that to get on-ground experience, and also going to uni at the same time, I think it was pretty important for me, because I sort of started off, I did a trade out of school. It was penalty by trade, did that for like 10 years. And then decided it was time to look at something different. That's when I sort of got interested in this, environmental sort of area and that type of thing. So I started identifying positions that I could start working my way through there while studying, and that's made a massive difference, and I'm pretty happy with the job I'm in now, that's for sure. Don't be afraid to reach out to people or ask questions. Sort of like what I said before, I think there's a lot of people with a lot of knowledge around that are happy to sort of talk to younger people or anyone really to sort of help them progress if they did want to get into the industry. And just, so don't be afraid to ring around or talk to people, ask about what opportunities are there, and try to identify if there is any jobs that you could get into, whether it be volunteering or work placements and things like that, to sort of start building those hands-on skills whilst you're studying, if you're going that way. Yeah. I think probably, I don't know, the diversity of it, sort of one day, looking at different things on farm with growers. And then, in the office and meeting with other professional people and things like that. But I think the diversity of not always being in the office, I sort of prefer being outdoors, which is probably why I didn't go to uni straight out of school. And I think there's a lot of jobs in the sugar industry which gives you that sort of a really nice mix of being out and about, and also being, in the office and that as well. I think that's probably one of the main things. Yeah.